Hello, this is Charmin from Remable. I'm glad to share our 2026 outlook on the Seoul Living Sector with you today. Today's presentation is structured in three parts. This video covers the first part, and two more videos will be uploaded. First, we will examine the structural characteristics of the Seoul rental market, looking at demand, supply, and capital flow, and benchmarking Seoul against other major APEC gateway cities. Second, we will turn to the macro and policy environment shaping the market today. And finally, we will explore where the opportunities lie and how institutional capital can access them in the current regulatory cycle. This is the single message I want you to take away from today's presentation. The opportunity in Seoul's living sector is structurally compelling on both the demand and the supply side. On the demand side, single-person households have been rising steadily and now account for over 40% of all households in Seoul. On the supply side, supply elasticity is among the lowest in the OECD, and housing permits have collapsed since 2022 under the combined weight of high land prices, rising construction costs, and regulatory tightening. And on the capital side, the principal source of rental housing capital is shifting away from individual landlord toward professional local operator with institutional investor. So the structural opportunity is clear, but regulation originally designed to curb speculative multi-home ownership are being applied indiscriminately to corporate rental operators, narrowing the addressable market to a defined niche. Our view is this: while current regulation limit the market to a niche today, the structural shift is inevitable, and positioning only with the right operator in the right pocket capture the upside when the market opens. The first section covered the characteristics of Seoul rental housing market, benchmarked against other major APEC gateway cities. This slide shows that single-person households are now the structural driver of Seoul's rental demand. In Seoul, one-person households have surpassed 40% of all households, having climbed by more than 10% points over the last decade, the fastest pace in the OECD. The regional comparison capture how far Seoul stands out at over 40%. Seoul is well ahead of Tokyo at 38%, and Sydney 26%, and Singapore at just under 60%. This graph shows that Seoul's household base continues to expand even as the national population shrinks, and that growth is being driven almost entirely by smaller households. The panel captures the story is three numbers. 1 and 2 person households together account for around 70% of all Seoul households. Single person households alone have reached roughly 40% as of 2024, and that 40% figure is up sharply from under 30% just a decade ago. And this graph shows that Korea's inbound tourism demand has reached a new record high. In 2025, the country welcomed 18.9 million foreign visitors, which is 8.2% above the 2019 peak, a clear signal of structural growth, not mere recovery. The right-hand panel captures the story in three numbers: a record 80.9 million arrivals, a 45.8% jump in American visitors versus 2019, and a 7.8-day average stay in the support spending. And this graph shows international students are a fast growing addition to Seoul's rental pool. In 2025, the number of foreign students enrolled at Korean universities reached a record 253,000, up 21% 3 point year on year. A clear signal that inbound talent is now a structural source of housing demand, not a cyclical one. The global appeal of K culture and Korean higher education continue to pull talent in. And Korea's shrinking school age population is pushing universities to actively recruit foreign students, structurally embedding inbound demand. And this graph shows that Seoul's housing supply is structurally locked, not cyclically tight. Using Harvard Professor Glazer's supply elasticity framework, which is the standard reference for housing supply economies, Seoul sits between zero point 0.2 and zero point 0.4, meaning a 1% rise in housing prices triggers only a 0.2 to 0.4% increase in new supply. Seoul's elasticities rank as the second most inelastic major APEC market after only Hong Kong, and the cluster of Tokyo, Singapore, and Sydney sitting in the same zone. I think this slide is very important and show the urgency of the situation. This graph shows that new housing supply in Seoul has shut down. Housing permits have fallen sharply since 2022, with the number of permitted units down more than 7% from the 2021 level. The chart on the left captures the scale. Permits have collapsed by more than 70% in just 3 years, falling to their lowest level in years, and effectively shutting off the new supply pipeline. And this slide shows that every major APEC cities run on its own main capital logic for housing. Tokyo is built on a developer-led J-REIT. Sydney on built-to-rent platform where local operator partnered with global investor, and Singapore on a state-led model where the government supply housing. Seoul, by contrast, has run on individual landlords. That landlord base is funded by 전세, which is a system unique to Korea. Instead of monthly rent, tenant hands the landlord a large lump sum deposit at the start of a 2-year lease and get it back at the end. It's giving the landlord effectively zero interest financing. The result is a rental market almost entirely held by individual owners. The shift is now underway. 전세 has produced a rising side effect, distorted home price inflation, deposit fraud risk, and household debt at the highest level in the OECD. In response, the government is actively suppressing 전세. And this graph shows that the structural shift from 전세 to monthly rent is no longer a forecast. It's already happening in the whole office town market. In the last 4 years, the rental mix has rotated away from the traditional deposit-based system toward a monthly cash flow. The chart on the left captures the trajectory clearly. In 2021, 전세 and monthly rent were almost evenly split, and by 2025, monthly rent has risen to roughly 75% of new leads. The exact percent matter less than the direction, but the trend line is consistent and accelerating. And this is the last slide of this video. This chart on the left compares the price to income, PIR ratio, and rent to income ratio, RIR ratio, across major gateway cities using Numbeo data. Seoul's PIR, price to income ratio, stands at 26.2 times, the second highest in the comparison, behind only Hong Kong, while its RIR, rent to income ratio, sits at 38%, the lowest among the cities listed. In Seoul, the PIR is relatively high and RIR is low, so the possibility of a monthly rent increasing looks high. The structural opportunity is clear. The opportunity in Seoul's living sector is structurally compelling on both the demand and the supply side.